We're doing the injured reserve musical chairs as the Washington Commanders send 2 down. The Carolina Panthers bringing 1 up, and all of those moves have the potential to significantly impact this week's contest. That's coming up on this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome in, everybody, to today's crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders and Locked On Panthers. Of course, both shows are part of the illustrious Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm David Harrison. He is Julian Council. We are the hosts of Locked On Commanders and Locked On Panthers, respectively, your daily podcast covering each of these NFL franchises. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode, where Julian and I are going to give you 3 things that both teams have to do in order to win this game. I'm going to tell you about some remodeling going on in Washington, D.C., and Julian is going to kick us all off with the return of what everybody hopes is going to be the best running back since Christian McCaffrey. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app, use the code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 play game, whatever you want to call it. We thank you for coming through today. Every day, as we send you out a special thank you for coming through every single day. Julian, the script, I'm going to be completely transparent here. The script from the network says away team defensive storyline, but we got to start offense, bro. Like what is, I mean, I already know, but let's tell the people who don't know what big thing is happening with the Carolina Panthers offense this week.
Yeah, the Panthers have officially opened up the 21-day window for their second-round pick, Jonathon Brooks, who the running back out of Texas, first running back taken in the 2024 NFL Draft, tore his ACL last November, has been working his way back. We were told on draft night by Ian Rappaport, who I'm sure was speaking from the Jonathon Brooks PR side of things, saying that he'll be ready to go by training camp. Dave Canales, Dan Morgan, the head coach and GM here in Carolina, felt like he'd be ready to go. And turns out he was not ready to go for training camp or for the first 6 weeks of the season. And he probably is not going to be ready to go this week either. As Dave Canales talked about, it's going to be week to week as they evaluate him. They want to see him comfortably playing at full speed before they throw him out there. And understand, too, like there's no rush to do this. I'm honestly surprised they open up the window now. I thought they might wait another week to where he could have 3 weeks, 21 days, and he could be able to have the bye week and then possibly make his debut against Kansas City. Now this opens up the door to probably have the debut a couple weeks from now against the Saints. And then, if not then, in Munich against the Giants. So it's big news for Carolina to finally get back a piece who they want to build around long-term. But it's not like they really need him, as Chuba Hubbard has been outstanding so far this season. So that's certainly big news when looking at the Panthers offense. That help is certainly on the way. How much needed help is it at the running back spot? To be determined.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because you just said it, and we kind of went through this when the Cleveland Browns came to Washington, Nick Chubb's window being open. I'm like, yeah, his window just got open, coming off a pretty serious injury, so it's probably not going to happen this weekend. But here's the thing that people have to remember to look behind the curtain. The Washington Commanders are now preparing as best they can to face a Jonathon Brooks Carolina Panthers rush tag with Hubbard, because it would be irresponsible not to. I actually can't remember off the top of my head who the Jets are playing this weekend, but whoever the Jets are playing this weekend, they played the Raiders last weekend because that head coach, I do remember this, said, I was just dealing with trying to prepare to potentially face Devontae Adams, even though we pretty much were all sitting at home saying this dude ain't playing for the Raiders again.
They're playing.
And now here he is having to prepare to play Devontae Adams again. Anyway, I guess the good news is
they're playing.
What's that?
They're playing the Steelers.
There you go. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Exactly. So I'm glad you remembered that. But that's the bottom line. Like at the end of the day, Jonathon Brooks doesn't actually have to step onto the field to impact this matchup, because now this coaching staff in Washington has to dedicate resources to trying to prepare for this running back. But like you said too, man, 9th ranked rushing attack in yards per rush in the NFL. Dan Quinn was very, very complimentary of the rushing attack when we talked to him on Wednesday. And the surprising thing here is when Dave Canales left Tampa, everybody's like, yeah, well, it's not like you're leaving a running game behind because you didn't really establish a running game. And now here the Carolina Panthers are. That's like the best part of their offense right now. But Julian, what is going on that Carolina Panthers defense that we need to look out for?
Well, I don't know what you can look out for because his defense has been terrible through 6 weeks so far this season. I know there's a lot of pressure, at least from the fan base, on Ejiro Evero, the DC here in Carolina, who would have had opportunities outside had David Tepper, the owner here in Carolina, not held him hostage, as it
Mm,
sounded like Sean
no,
McVay was interested in bringing him back to LA to coach the Rams defense after Raheem Morris came here in division to coach the Atlanta Falcons. There was also some interest up there from Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, but Tepper said no. I don't want to hire you as my head coach, but I'm also not going to allow you to make a lateral move to another organization and
no,
potentially have success with better players. And I've been talking about this week as, I mean, fans are upset that I get it. The defense is bad. He is coordinating defense, but like, man, Derek Brown's out for the entire season. Shaq Thompson's out for the entire season. Jadeveon Clowney, who is more of a name than an actual playmaker and difference maker in
mm,
2024. He missed last week and he was out there practice on Wednesday, but there's still some questions whether he'll be back with that shoulder injury on Sunday up there in Landover. And DJ Wonnum, who they signed before they brought in Clowney. That was the first edge rusher signing they made after they traded away Brian Burns. And that's a big piece of why the defense is bad. You traded away your best player and the
no,
other hurt. But DJ Wonnum has not played as he's been on pup, having to recover from a torn quad from last year. Josie Jules missed the last 2 weeks. Dane Jackson, who they signed to be a corner to replace Dante Jackson, hasn't played.
uh,
Fuller, he's missed 3 games. He's going to miss Sunday because he's still on IR. So, yeah, when you have that many complementary key pieces injured and your talent level drops off from a season ago, you're going to be 29th in total defense. You're going to be 32nd in points allowed. You're going to be 28th in yards per play allowed. You're going to be 29th in EPA, 31st in defensive DVOA, 29th in passing defense EPA, and 20th in run defense EPA, which honestly is probably the most surprising number because they have been awful against the run. So not quite sure how they could be
no.
ranked 20th at all against the run in the NFL according to EPA. So yeah, there's not much going on with the defense other than it's been atrocious.
Yeah. No, it's been rough. And no fan base, even most media corps aren't going to necessarily use injuries as an excuse for any coach. But I mean, there does come a time where you have to start looking like, all right, like this is a really like the New Orleans Saints. So like if the New Orleans Saints lay an offensive dud on Thursday night with how many receivers they have out, you kind of have to be like, okay, but they really don't
Like,
have,
what are you going to do?
yeah, I mean, they don't even have Taysom Hill to go out there to be their number one wide receiver. So there is a little bit of an excuse there. I want to ask you specifically about JC Horn. I know he's battled injuries throughout his entire career. He's someone that we asked Jayden Daniels Wednesday, what are your over general thoughts about the Carolina Panthers defense? Obviously, he's not going to give anything, schematic away, but he immediately went to JC Horns. That JC is incredibly physical, a really talented dude over there. So they're definitely going to be aware of where JC is lined up. What are your takes on JC this season, his career as a whole, battling those injuries? And then the question that every Commanders fan wants to know right now, Julian, is he or could he become available via trade?
Oh boy. I think when he's been available, he's been an excellent player for Carolina. The problem is he has
Yeah.
not been available a large portion of his career. Came into the season having missed 29 out of possible 51 games. And so far he's played in all 6 games this season, and things are trending towards him playing in all 7 games this season, as he has not been on the injury report. Going to go ahead and knock on wood and try not to jinx that. But man, he's a good player. It's just best ability is availability. And he has not been available up until this season. Only played 6 games last year, and he's already matched that total this season. And he's been by far their best covered corner. And he hasn't run into any. He had 1 interception so far this season. Haven't had a ton of takeaways throughout his career, but he's just a solid guy that can take away your number one receiver. And I'm very excited to see that matchup between him and Terry McLaurin that we were robbed of a couple years ago. That game when Cam Newton came back and Bank of America Stadium was alive. Dante Jackson had to step up because JC Horn was injured, and he got cooked that afternoon at Bank of America Stadium. And as far as the available, he's probably the top asset on the Panthers team. I think absolutely, considering the guys that are available. The Panthers did exercise that 5th-year option, which was a gamble considering his health issues in the past, but they decided they want to go out there and do it. And if he would have played at the level that he's playing at so far this season, and had they not done it, there's about an $8 million difference between franchise tagging him and the 5th-year option. So they're saving about $8 million by doing that. I don't think that there's any appetite for this organization to trade away yet another player that they hit on in the first round. Wouldn't put it past them, just knowing how things have gone and their thirst for trying to find that quarterback, which keeps leading them to getting rid of guys like Christian McCaffrey and Brian Burns and DJ Moore, and possibly we'll see what happens with JC Horn. But I don't think that's something that's likely to happen, but you can't rule it out.
Yeah. I mentioned I did a little bit of a brief kind of touch on like candidates that could become available. When we got to JC Horn, I mentioned not this weekend, but maybe 2-3 more losses before we start to get to November 5th. Maybe that inspires the Carolina Panthers to start moving on from someone like JC. Like you said, man, I mean, I wouldn't have thought they got rid of all the players that they already have gotten rid of. So you never can say never when it comes to the David Tepper owned Carolina Panthers. But we're going to shift the lens over a little bit more to the Washington Commanders side of things. That's coming up next on today's crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Commanders. This crossover episode of Locked On Commanders and Locked On Panthers is brought to you in part by Arena Club. And for most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Luka, an Ellie, or a Patrick Mahomes rookie card is not in the cards, pun fully intended. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. And thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of the retail price. Every card that I listed was a hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. So Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each and every one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl and using the code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl, code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase with Arena Club. Today's crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Panthers, Locked On Commanders, also brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time has a really cool feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. For my Game Time Picks right now here in the DC area, I can go see the Carolina Panthers play the Washington Commanders this weekend for $73. Or I can see the Dallas Stars visit the Washington Capitals for $10, or the Boston Celtics visiting the Washington Wizards for $32. And I can find all those great deals right in my Game Time Picks section. Plus, when I toggle on the all-in pricing feature on the app, I get all of my pricing up front, so there's no surprises when I go to checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Continuing now, it's today's crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders and Locked On Panthers. Julian Council, David Harrison coming through for this game preview for this weekend's matchup plan, or going down to Landover, Maryland at Northwest Stadium, the home of the Washington Commanders. And Julian, offensively, you may have heard of a young quarterback named Jayden Daniels. He's pretty good friends of Bryce Young's. We talked about that on Wednesday as well. He says he's thinking of Bryce. You know, obviously it's a tough situation for Bryce Young, but of course, Jayden is not having quite the problems that Bryce Young had in the beginning of his career and certainly is having now. And I think offensively for Jayden Daniels, if you look at the Carolina Panthers and what you would quote unquote expect to see from this defense, it's pressure, right? You would expect to see them dialing up pressure. Right now, the Carolina Panthers, fourth highest in the NFL in their blitz rate, 30% blitz rate is a pretty high blitz rate. But I wonder, Julian, and you can obviously tell me more about this, is there a possibility or even a likelihood that they might kind of go away from that tendency? Because when you look at Jayden Daniels against the blitz, he's been blitzed 79 times this season. That's the seventh most of any quarterback in the league. He's at a 75.9 completion percentage. That's third best. 573 yards passing. That's fifth best. 3 of his 6 TD passes have come against blitzes. None of his interceptions, 2 interceptions, have come against the blitz. And he's only thrown 2 turnover-worthy passes against said blitzes. And then that's before we even get into the rushing that he can do and the way he can punish blitzing teams with his legs. So do the Carolina Panthers stay true to that, 6-week identity, or do you think there could be a shift in the approach this weekend?
There could be a shift. Don't know if it matters. They can send 3 and get no pressure. They can send 4. They can send 5, 6, 7. They can send all 11, and they're not going to get any pressure. This is the team that has the worst pressure percentage in the NFL. They only have 6 sacks so far this season. And I've always felt pressure is greater than sacks as pressure leads to turnovers, and the Panthers don't get a ton of takeaways. And the times they have gotten takeaways have been because they got pressure. So maybe a Jero Vero drop back and make the rookie have to process more than deciding to try and send some blitzers. You got to keep them honest at some certain points in time. But if the tendency has been to blitz like they did with Caleb Williams, and he was a guy who wasn't great against the blitz, and the Panthers blitzed them and he picked them apart because they could not get home. And I don't see, even if Clowney, if he plays, I just don't see how these guys are going to be able to get home and be able to get the kind of pressure that they would like to affect Jayden Daniels on Sunday. So it might be the wisest thing to just drop back 8 and see if the rookie can process enough and beat this secondary throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing, right, to blitz. It's another thing to do it effectively, and then just because you do it a lot doesn't mean you're very good at it. And I think the only people really hoping that the Carolina Panthers stick to this trend are people who have Jayden Daniels on their fantasy roster. That's me and Jayden Daniels himself, because he's obviously doing pretty well against it. The thing that obviously has impressed people about Jayden Daniels is even when he's not being blitzed, he's still doing pretty darn well, and even going up against teams like the Baltimore Ravens, who a lot of people have an aggressive reputation in their mind about, but haven't actually been as aggressive as in recent years. Even when they're dropping guys into coverage, he's still having plus 100 or 100 plus passer ratings and finding touchdown avenues and all those things, and still putting up 20 plus points against those types of defenses. So it's going to be interesting because that Carolina Panthers defense is kind of reminiscent of some of the other defenses that we've seen Jayden Daniels face so far this year, where he's done pretty darn well. So you expect that to be kind of more of the same. Defensively, however, that has been the Washington Commanders' Achilles heel, and it's not necessarily anything new, but it was a little bit less expected, I think, this season. You bring in Dan Quinn, obviously a defensive-minded head coach who helped craft one of the better defenses in Dallas over the previous 3 seasons. He brings Joe Witt Jr. over with him to be his defensive coordinator, and they preach all off-season, all training camp. They're going to hunt the ball. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to be violent. They're going to be physical. They're going to turn teams over. And they are being fast. They are being physical, and they're trying to be violent. But outside of that, they're not doing a whole lot more than that. And, coming into the Baltimore Ravens game, Julian, I wanted to be a little bit careful because everybody's really high. We're all really excited on what's going on with the Washington Commanders. The defense had looked really good the last couple of weeks going up against Deshaun Watson in that Cleveland Browns offense, Kyler Murray in that Arizona Cardinals offense. And I think obviously the Cardinals better than the Browns, but that's 2 offenses that you don't necessarily hang your hat on having really good performances against those 2 teams specifically. The Baltimore Ravens, obviously a completely different animal. And then we saw a completely different result. Now Jonathan Allen is on the IR with a torn pec. He's gone for the rest of the year, potentially gone for, I have ventured to say he's probably played his last snap as a Washington Commander, to be quite honest with you. And then rookie Javonte Jean-Baptiste, 7th round pick, but he's actually had some moments and shown some flashes here in his rookie season. He's also gone on IR, not for the season, but he's at least gone for this week and then 3 more after that. So there's a lot of unrest going on up front. And we got the Carolina Panthers rush attack coming right into it. So it's really one of those situations where it's almost like the Arizona Cardinals. Connor got his on the ground average-wise, but the Washington Commanders offense was able to make the Cardinals get more one-dimensional by putting points on the board. Is there a chance that you think that by the time we get to halftime, the Carolina Panthers can still try to lean on their run to keep them in this game?
It's up to Dave Canales, honestly. He talked all offseason about being stubborn about running the football, and I understand week 1, you get down 30-0 pretty quickly. Hard to run the ball in that situation. Week 2, I mean, they were down the whole time, but it wasn't like they were getting blown out in that entire game and still didn't really see it. Now, they were terrible on 3rd down. And Canales talked about if you can't convert on 3rd down, it's really hard to get to some of the parts of the offense that you like to, which is handing the ball off to Chuba Hubbard. And they were able to do it against Las Vegas in that win. It did it next week against Cincinnati, back-to-back 100-yard rushing games. He leads the game off with a touchdown on their second drive against Chicago and barely saw the ball the rest of the day. Then last week, they had a drive right when they were down 28-20, trying to go down, tie the game, and they take the ball out of Chuba Hubbard's hand after he helped them get down the field. And Andy Dalton, targeting Ian Thomas of all people, throws an interception to A.J. Terrell. And that was basically the game right then and there. So I know there's a lot of frustration for fans about, and just people in general, just observing this team. Like, Hubbard leads the NFL in rushing success rate among players of at least 50 attempts. So why not keep giving this man the ball? My hope is that they won't abandon it if they're having success. And we've even heard from Robert Hunt, the right guard, who came over here on a $100 million contract. He said a couple weeks ago in their loss to Chicago how he wished they had ran the ball more because that was the only thing they were doing well that afternoon. So we'll see. It depends, of course. Can they convert down the field? Are they in kind of a situation where they're able to get out the field defensively? All that factors in, time score. But that is the best thing that they do offensively, hand the ball to Chuba Hubbard. And we'll see if they decide to abandon it again, because that has certainly happened portions so far this season.
Yeah, it really reminds me of that Arizona Cardinals matchup, Julian, that the Washington Commanders had to face. Because again, James Conner, like the Arizona Cardinals, when James Conner is rolling, the Arizona Cardinals are a very dangerous offense, but they, for some reason, willingly get away from James Conner in
Yeah.
situations where they don't necessarily need to. And Carolina Panthers, like you just broke down beautifully, really doing some of the same things. Of course, Commanders fans would love to see it, but it is frustrating just as a football purist to watch football. You're like, bro, what are you doing? Like,
Just run the ball, man.
it's pretty clear to everybody. Yeah, it's pretty clear that that's your best avenue. Look, Dave Canales is a pass guy. I don't know. Maybe you just can't get past it. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, of course, Washington Commanders fans are hoping that Jayden Daniels and then obviously put up points in a hurry and force the Carolina Panthers to get away from that run game, because that is, of course, going to be, I don't say the Achilles heel. The secondary in Washington has been a little bit suspect as well, but I think that is going to be the biggest concern in this matchup specifically, given what the Carolina Panthers have done so far on the ground. What three things must the Carolina Panthers do to overcome that 8.5-point spread that they are down by right now on FanDuel? We'll dive into that coming up next on this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders and Locked On Panthers. This crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders, Locked On Panthers, brought to you by our good buddies over at FanDuel. And for NFL fans, you can get a big return this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Let's say you're at home watching the Commanders, watching the Panthers, and one of these teams is down a score. Maybe they're down 2 scores. Things aren't going right, but you have a hunch. You've got a gut feeling that whichever team you think is going to pull this thing out, they're going to make that comeback. They're going to pull out that win. You can go to FanDuel to make that wager in game for that team to pull out the victory. But not only that, you can check out the latest stats. You can view the live play-by-play and so much more on the exact same page that you're looking to place that bet. So whether that's on the Washington Commanders, any other action you're looking to get into, go to FanDuel. And if it's your first bet, you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So it's even better. You get all the information right where you can do that, and you can get $200 in bonus bets. So take advantage of this latest deal and get into the action with FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. This week's crossover episode of Locked On Panthers, Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Prize Picks. And what we're going to do now is Julian Council of Locked On Panthers and I, David Harrison of Locked On Commanders, are going to talk about the 3 things that each team has to do, must do in order to get a win this weekend. Yeah, Julian, that line started at 7.5 points in favor of the Commanders. It is now 8.5 points. The only other game with that big of a spread is Buffalo versus Tennessee. Commanders fans will be very happy to see that they're at least line-wise being compared to a team like Buffalo. It's been a long time since the Washington franchise has been that highly sought after. But what are the 3 things, Julian, the Carolina Panthers must do for Dave Canales to get a big win on the road?
Well, they probably about 30 things they must do to win this game, but we'll just stick to 3 today. Number 1, I mean, defensively, as we talked about earlier, it's been bad. Aside from playing a bad Raiders offense that's already changed from Gardner Minshew to Aiden O'Connell, the Panthers have not been able to stop anybody. And looking at this Commanders offense, yikes. Number 1 in offensive EPA, number 1 in passing offense EPA, and a paltry number 4 in rushing offense EPA. The Panthers, they got their work cut out for them, and they might get Dane Jackson back this Sunday, which will certainly help in the secondary. They're still going to have some questions back there at safety, but I feel like their passing defense can hold up. But if they can't stop the run, then they're not going to really need to face the pass that much, as Jayden Daniels shouldn't be throwing the football at all. And number 2, there's going to be points scored because, as you mentioned, the Commanders don't have a good defense either. Now, it's not as bad as the Panthers' defense has been, but it's 26 in defensive EPA. And they're 27th against the pass, 24th against the run. The Panthers' rushing success rate is 54.6 so far, which is one of the top 5 in the NFL. And Chuba Hubbard has been outstanding so far this season. So as long as Dave Canales is committed to it, the Panthers will be able to control the ball, run the football down the field, and then pick and choose their opportunities to throw the ball. I mean, Deontay Johnson's also been pretty good for them when he's gotten those opportunities, and Andy Dalton has certainly stabilized the offensive passing game. Need guys like Xavier Legette to step up once again, had a touchdown last week. Jalen Coker, an undrafted free agent out of Holy Cross, he has taken over Jonathan Mingo's spot there on the depth chart, and he's somebody to look out for as well. And at number 3, they got to take care of the football, and that's just a pretty simple thing every single week. But for the Panthers, they have turned the ball over in 5 of their 6 games. The one game they didn't turn it over, That's the one game that they won against Las Vegas on the road. They're averaging 1.7 giveaways per game. That's tied 27th in the NFL. The Commanders are only giving up 0.5 giveaways, which is third in the NFL. So they're not turning the football over. And points off turnover is something that also kills Carolina, killed them last year as well. Their opponents have scored 51 points off turnovers. Panthers have scored 9. So not any points so far this season have they gotten a fumble or an interception or whatever and taken that in for 6. Last week, had a great opportunity to take the lead, go up potentially 14-7 on Atlanta, had a holding call, had ended up kicking a field goal, and then you see later on in that game an interception when they're down 28-20, and the Falcons run it down their throat to go up 35-20 to salt that game away. And honestly, it should be 58-9. But Clark Phillips decided, actually, I don't need this pick 6. Let me fall down here and let's kneel at home and go home here in Atlanta. So, yeah, if they turn it over, that's typically cashed in the 7 points for the opponent.
Yeah, you know what, man? We're seeing this game very, very similarly because on the opposite side of things, the 3 things that the Washington Commanders have to do starts off with playing good defense against subpar competition. And again, that 9th rushing offense per play is very, very significant. And that is the part of this Carolina Panthers offense that clearly is not subpar. But when we talk about an overall offensive unit and overall team, that these are the games. If you want the Washington Commanders to continue being talked about as one of the better teams in the league or a good team in the league, and they're definitely not in like the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens part of the conversation, but they're slowly kind of climbing up the ladder in NFL dignity. These are the games that you're expected to win. I mean, again, 8.5 point spread, bro. Like you are supposed to win this kind of a game. And one of those ways you're going to win this game is by either stopping that 9th best rush offense per play or by forcing Dave Canales, like we just talked about, to turn to that 28th in pass yards per play passing offense with Andy Dalton. So play sound defense, play smart defense, play intelligently aggressive defense is the way that I've been describing it here in DC for the Washington Commanders. They certainly still, even with John Allen going on IR, Fedarian Mathis, the young 3rd-year defensive tackle, has been playing fairly well. Johnny Newton, the rookie out of Illinois, has shown some flashes, and certainly he's expected to do some things. Sheldon Day, the veteran, has been added to the active roster, so he's going to get some more rotation in there as well. And hopefully Dorrance Armstrong Jr., the defensive end they brought over from the Dallas Cowboys, is going to be able to come back because he has honestly been a critical part. Last week against Baltimore Ravens, the 4 series that Dorrance Armstrong was on the field for before he got injured, Derrick Henry only had 1 explosive run in those 4 drives. The 5 drives that came after he left the game, he had 3. So that's a very significant uptick in explosive runs. It's not only a Dorrance Armstrong thing, but there is a little bit of a Dorrance Armstrong connection to that whole situation as well. So that's number 1. Play good defense against what has been in totality subpar competition. Number 2, continue the blitz dominance. We kind of already talked about that a little bit, but Brian Robinson Jr. is another part of that as well. The better you can run the ball, the more you can hit play action, the more you can maybe get B-Rob going in the screen game a little bit, the better that will impact a defense that likes to be aggressive and tries to get pressure, even if they don't necessarily always get it. Not sure Brian Robinson's going to come back. The team is definitely taking it easy on that. But I'll tell you right now, a lot of locker room conversations happened on Wednesday where it was, yeah, it's going to be great to get B-Rob back. Yeah, getting B-Rob back is really awesome. Over here, getting B-Rob back is going to be really fun this weekend. Kind of sounds like Brian Robinson's coming back this weekend. I mean, again, continue to keep your injury reports. But either way, even if it's just Jayden Daniels doing what he does against an aggressive defense, continue that type of dominance and then get takeaways. We just talked about the turnover battle, right? Get takeaways. Andy Dalton is 7th in turnover-worthy plays, despite being 27th in dropbacks. He's played 5 games, started 4, and yet he is still 7th in turnover-worthy plays. The Washington Commanders have faced turnover-worthy plays this season. What they're not doing is turning them into turnovers. That's what you got to be able to do against the Carolina Panthers offense, because we've seen this dance in the NFL. Every year you see it at least a handful of times. A team that has no business beating one team comes in, that team that's supposed to dominate gives them opportunities, opens up that door, and that opponent will take that door. Don't forget, that's still an NFL team over there, so nobody should be sleeping on this competition.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting game, and it looks like it's gonna be a shootout. And I do wonder, like if this Panthers offense, which I mean that's not about Andy Dalton, that is certainly an eye opener hearing about that. But like, I just don't think that top end talent offensively they are equipped to win a shootout. Like I like Deontay Johnson. I don't think he's as good as Taylor McLaurin is, and I mean Jayden Daniels obviously has been outstanding. Should score a lot of points. I saw the over-under went down from 52.5 to 51.5. That's surprising to me because I feel like the over should be hit on Sunday. Certainly Washington's team over. I would be betting on that on Sunday. Should be an entertaining game. And I'm very excited to see Frankie Louvu, how he's utilized in that Commanders defense now with Dan Quinn. I know he spoke glowingly about how he wished he had always been with Dan Quinn in his career. And of
Mhm.
course, Jeremy Chin as well, somebody who Gerald Rivera, the DC in Carolina, didn't really utilize at all last season after talking about he was going to put him close to the line of scrimmage as a playmaker. Now he's out there starting in Washington. Maybe he has something to prove on Sunday. And, there's always here in Charlotte, before the Panthers were here, this used to be a Washington, then Redskins market. So there's still
Mhm.
plenty of fans in the area, as this area's changed a lot, that have the Washington ties. And my dad's formerly a Redskins fan, a Washington fan. I don't think he really cares anymore now. I've been living in Charlotte for all these years, but still, there's always that element of this game. So it should be a fun game on Sunday, and we'll see if the Panthers can keep it closer than that 8.5-point spread.
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually so this has nothing to do with the game, but I'm actually curious. Dan Quinn has been using game captains. There's no permanent captains on this team, and so
Okay.
far there have been no doubles. But Frankie Louvu and Jeremy Chin have both been captains already. So I'm kind of curious to see is there going to be a doubled up captain? Because I mean, it seems like a prime opportunity to have Jeremy Chin and Frankie Louvu both be captains for this game. But we will see. Of course, on the next episode of Locked On Commanders, we'll talk more about this matchup. Next episode of Locked On Panthers, the same thing. In the meantime, you got questions or comments, just reach out to us the way that you always reach out to us. Make sure you check out the Locked On NFL podcast next. Madman Tyler Rowland kicks you off in the morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then you roll through the afternoon with Tony Wiggins for more of a barbershop feel and some real NFL talk. It's the all-new Locked On NFL, and it is twice a day. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders and Locked On Panthers your first listen of the day, every day. Thanks for coming through to both shows like you do. And until we speak again, we will see you right back here for another episode of Locked On Commanders, Locked On Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.